Hello and welcome back to Podcasting is Praxis. It's a different kind of episode because David has the lurgy, so he cannot be with us. But I'm Rob and my pronouns are he and him.
I'm Alistair and my pronouns are he and him.
I'm James and my pronouns are they and them. I'm strangely in the middle of a list. I'm not sure how I feel about this.
And I'm Jamie, my pronouns are he and him. And we're joined today by the guy that does the music for Peace at Home.
The man himself, here at last. The star of every episode until this one.
Tonight's episode is about how terrible Sinan's memory is. Take it away, Jordan.
And my pronouns are he and him.
Yeah, welcome to our first live studio recording. We're very excited to do this musical episode with you today.
Oh, don't encourage him. He does have the guitar right there.
Yeah, we have started off very disjointed today because David's not in the Discord call. We're all out of order because Rob has introduced us all. So I'm already disoriented, and I'm sure that's only going to improve over the course of this.
Yeah, so essentially, mainly we're going to be talking about an excellent article that Jamie and I read last week, but I was going to launch straight into it, but then I saw this amazing piece literally pop up 10 minutes before we started. I can't not talking about it, and I'm just going to start reading from The Guardian. Keir Starmer has urged his shadow cabinet to stop briefing the press that he is boring, warning them what's boring is being in opposition.
The worst thing that's ever been briefed about the leader of opposition in recent memory.
To be fair, what's boring is being in opposition. It's the most boring fucking thing he could possibly have said.
Several of those around the table then echoed their leader's call for unity and discretion in a lengthy exchange described by one shadow frontbencher as, ironically, very boring.
You gotta hand it to him.
Yeah, I mean, same, Don't call me boring. What's boring is being in opposition is the fucking opposite of those cool youth pastors. Do you know what I mean? You know who else was radical? Was our Lord and Saviour Jesus Christ.
Do you know who else was boring? The Labour Shadow Cabinet.
Keir Starmer turning his chair around, putting on a baseball cap.
That man, I think if you tried to put a baseball cap on his head, it would spontaneously combust. Genuinely.
I mean, no, the hair would go straight through.
Yeah, actually.
Real.
Slow down, James. Would the hat combust or would his head? I need to know.
The hat, sadly, Jordan. But actually, I'm with Alistair on this. You'd put it on his head and his hair would clip straight through because the collision physics on his hair aren't done properly.
So what we're saying is essentially that Keir Starmer is the thing.
Now all I really want him to do is next week for PMQs is just come in and have a skateboard over his shoulder. That would...
It's actually pretty fucking funny though, because I remember... I think it was sometime this time last year or thereabouts. Some Tory junior minister or whatever saying that Keir Starmer was making being in government very boring because they don't oppose anything. It's give us something to do, man.
Also, sorry, I've just got it in my head now. Keir Starmer trying to deliver his speech for Opposition Day when he's questioning the Prime Minister while balanced precariously on a skateboard because he's never stood on one before in his life. That image gives me energy.
So when you said about his hair clipping through the hat, it just made me think of him walking into Parliament, immediately T-posing, falling through the floor and clipping into the Thames.
and strangely, that puts him up 5 points.
In a bid to shake off allegations of being boring, the leader of the opposition challenges the Prime Minister to a skateboard competition.
In an effort to shake off allegations of being boring, Keir Starmer hires Todd Howard to do his personal physics. Yes. I'd love to see it.
Todd Howard gives Keir Starmer an awesome button to just hit so that everyone knows that he's awesome.
Rachel Reeves going on Question Time or something and talking about doing the Batman. It's at that level.
Yeah, it's a good week for him though because he's 22 points ahead of Boris Johnson.
You'd think so. An opinion poll for The Observer on Sunday found that voters believe Boris Johnson still makes a better PM than Starmer by 28 to 26%. Although I must stress, and this is what the government's leaving out, they are both led by 35% saying neither, which is just absolutely fantastic.
No, but there was a guy on Twitter who fucking boasted that Starmer was 22 points ahead of Johnson. And when people figured out what the fuck he was talking about, there was a poll where their approval rating like Johnson was on minus 28 and Starmer was only on minus 6, so he was 22 points ahead.
it's the slow clap of a year as far as I'm concerned for that one, because the contortions you have to put yourself through just to try and justify a meme that was made up to make fun of you is chef's kiss. Love it.
But it's like starting at the beginning of a race and then you take a step back and your opponent like takes 14 backflips behind you further. It's like, I'm winning this one.
Right, anyway, should we stop talking about this boring cunt and get on with the
actual... Okay, I'll read one more short paragraph and then we'll move off this. A word cloud produced this week by the polling group JL Partners, based on responses from 1,000 voters, showed that boring was the adjective most frequently used on Starmer. Other prominent descriptions included bland and weak, but also honest.
What?
That was great. There's some of the words in it. It's like dick, twat. There's another one in there that I can't remember, which I enjoyed. But
I mean, I will say it is fascinating because clearly somebody's turned on the fucking taps. Because like the Guardian's been at it for a week now. The New Statesman put out something. There's a bunch of columnists all of a sudden discovering that Starmer is boring and bad.
Wow, they've only just figured this out, and no one was wrong about this until a week ago.
Well, because until a week ago, no one had stood him next to Wes Streeton and just been blinded by the difference in charisma between the two of them.
Do you know what I think might actually be going on here? I think they're getting ready to dislodge Keir Starmer because they don't want to dislodge Boris and leave Starmer in. They'd rather have two separate, like, fresh faces, essentially.
So, two things I want to bring up. I've actually been in person to hear Wes Streeting speak, which was fantastic. It was unbelievably boring.
What does a sentient briefcase sound like?
And the other thing, I've forgotten. What would we? I can't. It's so.
If
boring.
you can't even remember it now, then it speaks volumes.
Yeah, no, it was about Keir Starmer, which is so forgettable. But it was about how the press have just noticed that he's boring. They still haven't noticed that he's not honest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's because that's the bit they agree with. They agree with him lying to like the Labour membership in 2020 rather, because it meant that anyone to the left of centre didn't win. So
yeah, it meant the Pope didn't get in.
Oh, he's been having a great one as well, isn't he? Not the Pope hater.
Well,
the anti-Pope.
Anti-Pope Mason.
All right, so having briefly done that, I really want to talk about Jamie and I read the same article because it's fucking amazing, and I've trimmed it down quite substantially, but we'll take a little bit of time getting through it, so I just want to get into it. This is written by Patrick Radden Keefe and published in The New Yorker originally under the title of King Josh, and it's just too good not to read, so I'm just going to get straight into it.
King Josh.
Inside a North Virginia office building on the 9th floor, through another door that requires badge access, is a CIA office with the ostentatiously bland name the Operations Support Branch. It's the agency's secret hacker unit in which cadres of elite engineers create cyber weapons as part of its cyber intelligence division.
I do like how, with a name like that, it is either the most evil, like, concoction ever devised by the human mind, or, like, Keir Starmer's fucking IT department,
I've got to confess, I haven't read this, but I have heard about this whole thing, and it is superb.
I read a huge chunk of it, I'm going to be honest, until I realised, oh shit, we're meant to be doing this for a read. Right, I'll stop reading then. I'm
the only one going in blind. Fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, you've got to do the reactions of 5 people, so I hope you're ready.
I can just about do one.
How's your Jamie impression, Alistair?
I just try and do an impression of David.
Oh, come on, you've seen that clip from Castle enough times to be able to do the accent by now, haven't you?
I've got to talk about dunching and gadgies and then going down the tune, and that's it.
I'll just ask you know what I mean.
Have you got Hurdy-Gurdy there to do like the music in the background as he's...
OSB is a branch focused on physical access stuff, i.e. you have to get a USB stick into a guy's computer so that the CIA can download their stuff, listen, etc., etc. Usually that has to be done by hand because of reasons.
That's not fucking true. The best way to get a USB stick into some fucking idiot's computer is to leave it in the parking lot outside their building.
I mean, that is part of what they do. For my sins, I actually have a little bit of a background in physical penetration testing.
I thought you were going to say I'm working for the CIA, and I thought this was going to go completely different.
Surprise, motherfucker! I'm one-upping Paul Mason.
I was going to say James pulls off his face mask, and it is Paul Mason underneath there.
To be fair, what they said did sound incredibly horny anyway.
Physical penetration testing, yes.
Yeah.
According to the man who supervised this division, Sean, the unit could be a high-stress environment because it was supporting life or death operations. But while these jobs were cutting edge and at least vicariously dangerous, the OSB was in many other aspects just like any other office. There was a bullpen of cubicle workstations, a dozen or so people clocking in and out every day. We were kind of known as a social branch, said another employee. Because of the national security concerns, they couldn't take their work home or talk to anyone on the outside because of what they did. It was a classified sanctum, a locked vault. Like the crew of a submarine, they forged strong bonds and, sometimes, strong antagonisms.
A locked submarine where you go home at the end of the day.
There was banter, plenty of it, much of it jocular, and some of it juvenile. The coders were mainly young men and came up with nicknames for one another. One unit member, who bought braces as an adult, became known as Train Tracks. When another brought in food to the office and didn't share, some of his colleagues started calling him Dick Move.
Wow. These are some exemplary nicknames. I wonder what ones were too awful to print.
The group's ultimate manager was a more senior official named Karen, who acknowledged that the members could be boisterous, adding, "Folks could get a little loud, a little bit of back and forth. Some of them brought Nerf guns to work, big, colourful machine guns, and would occasionally shoot darts at each other from their desks. Sometimes people got away and work was paused for some sustained bombardment."
Can I just point out that I really love that the fucking dipshit manager put in charge of herding this lot of man-children is literally called Karen?
Yeah.
And that later, when the complaints come up, it has to go through an exasperated Karen. I love that. I love that about life. It's you couldn't write this script.
The only force that could tame the absolute chaotic energy of the fucking group of 4chan dudes is probably a woman in her middle age, with an authoritarian streak.
Yeah.
I've been wondering for a while, who's the kind of person that would pay for that $8,000 or whatever it was Star Wars experience as 2 nights and a day and a half? It's these cunts.
Yes.
Maybe.
One of the Nerf gunfighters was Joshua Schult, his real name. A skinny Texan in his 20s, he had a goatee and a shaved head. In what may have been a preemptive gambit, Schult gave himself the nickname Badass, going so far as to make it...
Fucking... how does someone not... How does someone not realise how awful it is to try and force your own nickname that you've given yourself onto other people?
You got to remember, they are pre-selected here. To end up being a computer programmer, whiz kid,
you must be
viruses.
This cringe to work here.
You do. It's for the CIA. They need the most oblivious people possible in order to be able to get them into the whole venture, right?
Going so far as to make a fake nameplate and then stick it on his cubicle.
Just walking in on the first day, so hi, my name's Jordan, but you can call me Mr. Regular Size Dick.
But others in the office called him Voldemort, a reference to the hairless villain in the Harry Potter books. Schulte and his colleagues worked on sophisticated malware with codenames such as Angerquake and Brutal Kangaroo. The hackers could choose their own names that reflected their personal enthusiasms. Several programs were named for brands of whiskey. There was Wild Turkey, Ardbeg, and Lafroig. One was called McNugget.
Oh, the duality of man.
That is the singularly most relatable fact about this whole endeavour, is the fact that rather than go for the usual CIA kind of code name of, Operation Spanner Call and things like that, they've just gone for, it's McNugget. McNugget is going to take down all the Iranian nuclear, centrifuges. Love it. It's fantastic.
So Operation Fleshlight.
Exasperated Karen looks up from her desk. No, you can't call it Fleshlight.
Exasperated Karen would be a good operation name for the CIA.
On March 7, 2017, the website WikiLeaks launched a series of disclosures that were catastrophic for the CIA. It leaked out the CIA's hacking toolbox, the custom-made techniques that had used to compromise Wi-Fi networks, Skype, and antivirus software. It exposed Brutal Kangaroo and Angerquake. It even exposed McNugget. Then
no, not McNugget! My boy!
My beautiful golden boy.
Look how they massacred my boy.
So essentially, there's a bunch of paragraphs about how the CIA goes like mad trying to find out who leaked it. This new breach was perceived as such an egregious affront to US national security that the administration was determined to get to the bottom of it. The FBI began an investigation and agents worked around the clock.
One thing you've skipped there is that they initially worried they weren't going to be allowed to do an investigation because Donald Trump was on public record as saying that he loved WikiLeaks.
Yeah.
after they leaked fucking Hillary Clinton's emails.
I mean, the real tragedy was that McNugget was just 1 week away from retirement.
Hand in your box and your straw.
An atmosphere of paranoia enshrouded the inquiry. One FBI agent described how a CIA officer who was approached for an interview reacted with reflective suspicion, pointing out that anyone can say they're an FBI agent. As the FBI interviewed members of the team, one suspect came into focus, Joshua Schultz, Voldemort. He'd left the agency in 2016 and was said to have been disgruntled, but he'd now worked at Bloomberg. So there's some bio stuff. He's essentially grew up as a middle class as a big computer dork. On a blog that he maintained in college, he espoused libertarian views. He was a devotee of Ayn Rand and came to believe that, as he put it, there is nothing evil about rational selfishness.
Reducing the age of consent. What?
Yeah, he actually got the name Voldemort because he was really obsessed with hunting this one boy.
The one that got away.
He also had a certain intellectual arrogance. Most Americans, most people in general, are idiots, he wrote in 2018. Said a friend, he was always a huge Ron Paul guy. However, Schulte proved to be a capable programmer and in 2015 was granted special distinction when he was made systems administrator for the CIA's developer network, or DevLAN. Now he could control which employees had access to the network that held the source code for a lot of the projects. Being a sysadmin was regarded, said another colleague, a privileged position. He also made friends with a colleague called Michael. One day, at work, he shot a rubber band at Michael, and Michael returned fire. This went back and forth until late at night, Michael recalled. He trashed my desk, I trashed his desk. The conflict escalated until both men were throwing punches.
On the top of the building, one hanging over the side.
Volcano erupting in the background, absolutely.
Yeah.
I just love the idea of a libertarian going and joining, was it the FBI?
Yeah. No, the CIA, even.
Yeah, it's like the anarchist tank divisions, right?
But yeah, he, there was a piece in it about how he used to complain about Big Brother. And how like government overreach spying on everyone, and then he just fucks off the CIA to write spyware.
It's bad when it's spying on me. It's good when it's spying on other people, and they're paying me for it.
Seems like a real principled dude.
Well, he's got that one principle.
Said his colleague Sean, Schulte could get a little off the hinge. The man known as Badass and Voldemort...
Oh, fuck's sake, no he wasn't! He called himself Badass!
Accrued yet another office nickname, the Nuclear Option. Schulte had been on the job for about 3 years when a new programmer named Amel joined the OSB. He sat near Schulte and they were partnered on a project called Drifting Deadline. They did not get along. Schulte liked to shoot Amel with his Nerf gun. As Amel grew more accustomed to the Bureau's raucous culture, he started fighting back. He would collect Schulte's Nerf darts and stash them behind his desk. He began trolling others in the office, maligning their skills as coders and devising his own cruel nicknames. He referred to Schulte as the bald asshole. Amel was heavy, and Schulte reciprocated by making fun of his weight. Their bickering intensified.
This is an incredible background on like boring like office spats.
The in-office beef, I'm skipping a couple paragraphs. The in-office beef between them essentially escalates to the point that they both start complaining to the HR division. According to Schulte, Emil had told him, "I wish you were dead. I want to piss on your grave," and "I'd wish you die in a fiery car crash." Such rhetoric, Schulte noted, does little to foster collaboration. And essentially... Essentially, Schulte keeps whining until he gets the head of the entire CIA's HR department involved, who essentially sits them both down and tells them to behave like adults.
And he's unable to do that.
Oh,
He is very much unable to do that.
I just love the huge big brain insights of like saying, "I wish you would die and I'll piss on your grave." Doesn't foster collaboration.
And in a fantastic bonus move, the HR department also decides to physically separate Emil and Schulte by moving Schulte to a different desk with a different view. And that, as we'll find out, was a very bad idea.
Was there a great like line of sight into the like nearby school or something?
Schulte was furious to learn that he had to switch desks. He said that he would relocate only if his managers issued the directive in writing, so they did. Even then, he refused to fully move. He didn't like the new location. It had no window. It was, he scoffed, an intern's desk. Amel, by the way, had been promoted to a better desk, leaving Schulte exposed to questions and ridicule about why I was demoted.
People just walking past the intern's desk like, "Well, did you get demoted?" Every single day, forever.
Well, you would, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Well, you certainly would, Jamie.
Then he decided to embark on a more decisive escalation, concluding, as he later explained, that since the agency wouldn't help me, perhaps the state would. Citing fears for his safety, Citing fears for his safety, Schulte filed for a restraining order against Emil in Virginia State Court. An official from the agency's Office of Security later said that his escalating behavior kept going on and on and on. In an email, Schulte threatened to go public, saying that a lawyer he had spoken to has suggested an article titled "CIA Punishes Employees for Reporting Office Death Threats" will be an article that the media will be very interested in.
This guy is so stupid.
I love threatening people with like cool headlines that other people I know have like made up.
Yeah.
Just don't fucking try and threaten the CIA of all fucking things. Like, I mean, at some point you have to be aware these guys do extrajudicial murders. Maybe I shouldn't like threaten to embarrass them in public. Just a thought.
It's not the most badass thing to do, is it?
Oh, but it turns out to be a genius move getting the restraining order, doesn't it?
Yeah. Before his departure, there had been one final incident. He had been moved off Project Brutal Kangaroo, but he saw this as a retribution for complaining. And so Schulte, without being asked for authorization, reassigned himself access to his old project in his role as sysadmin. When his managers learned of this, they were so alarmed that they stripped Schulte of his admin privileges. So essentially, there's a long tangent boiling down to there's a huge pool of what the US government classifies as secret documents, many of which are much more likely to be designated as such to save the government embarrassment. And they also keep getting leaked. You know, the discussion about Snowden, Manning, etc., etc.
Well, a couple of things I want to mention about that though is he got the restraining order against the other guy, and that meant he had to be moved to a completely different department because he wasn't allowed to be in the same like room as the guy. Yeah. And he got mad. He got mad about being reassigned to a different department and told to work on something else. And also there was a quote from like some higher up at the CIA who he tried to like bamboozle by claiming he was in genuine fear for his life because the guy had like made death threats against him, and the guy was just like, I'm trained to do threat assessments. This bullshit doesn't, like, you know what I mean? I can't believe, I'm insulted that he thought this would work.
This is now about the FBI investigation into the leak of all these hacking tools to WikiLeaks. Even as FBI investigators pinpointed Schulte as the prime suspect, their work was frustrated by this pageantry of overclassification. WikiLeaks had posted the Vault 7 tools on the internet, where anybody could see them, but officially the CIA and the FBI maintained that the documents remained classified. As a result, only investigators who held the necessary security clearances were permitted to even access WikiLeaks to see what had been stolen. FBI officials were so nervous about visiting the website using bureau computers or internet connections, thereby possibly exposing their own networks to cyber intrusion, that they dispatched an agent to buy a brand new laptop and visit the WikiLeaks website from the safety of a Starbucks.
It's low fucking budget, like, thriller hacker movie where it's got to buy a laptop and go to a Starbucks. Fucking incredible.
Once the Vault 7 materials had been downloaded from the internet, the laptop itself became officially classified and had to be stored in a secure location.
And everyone who touched the laptop became officially classified, and so on and so forth.
However, the evidence locker normally used by agents, which held drugs and other seized evidence, wouldn't do, because it was classified only up to secret. Instead, investigators stored the laptop inside a supervisor's office in a special safe that had been certified to hold higher classification material. Even though literally everybody in the world could go online and see all the materials on WikiLeaks.
It's fucking incredible.
Fucking Jobsworths.
So it is at this point that the FBI is listening in on Schulte's calls and stuff, and they figure out that he's planning a trip abroad with his brother. The FBI, in fear that he won't come back, arrests him straight away. And this is where it gets really weird. When FBI agents obtain a warrant for Schulte's search history from Google, they discovered that, starting in August 2016, when he was preparing to leave the CIA, he had conducted 39 searches related to WikiLeaks. In the hours after WikiLeaks posted the documents, he searched for FBI and read articles with such titles as FBI joins CIA in leaker hunt. For a guy who was an expert in information warfare, Schulte seemed shockingly sloppy when it came to his own personal security. However, no direct links between Schulte, Vault 7 and WikiLeaks were ever found. It's all circumstantial. When computer scientists at the FBI examined Schulte's laptop, they discovered a virtual machine, an entire operating system, nesting within the computer's standard operating system. The virtual machine was locked with very strong encryption, meaning that unless they could break the code or get the key from Schulte, both of which seemed unlikely, they couldn't access it. But they also had Schulte's cell phone, and when they checked it, they discovered a startling lapse in security. He had stored a bunch of passwords on his phone. so
this guy's so fucking good at computers, and yet.
Oh, it gets worse.
Yeah.
Does he find a USB stick in the parking lot?
One of the passwords let the investigators bypass the encryption on the virtual machine. Inside, they found another encrypted directory. They consulted Schulte's phone again, and sure enough, another stored password unlocked that directory. Next, they found an encrypted logbox inside the encryption, a third line of defense. But using standard software and the same password that had unlocked the first tool, they managed to access the content. Inside was a series of folders. When the investigators opened them...
mycrimes.pdf.
When the investigators opened them, they found an enormous cache of child pornography.
Oh, okay.
Jesus.
Libertarian.
Wow. Yep. Okay. Fuck's sake.
And bark. And bark. Woof, woof, woof.
Just to let you know that James had to return to their home planet and unfortunately will no longer be on the rest of this episode. Anyway, let's get back to it. When the news broke that Schulte was a suspect in the WikiLeaks Vault 7 leak, Chrissy Covington, a DJ and radio personality in Texas who had attended junior high school with him, took to Facebook to express her surprise. However, she started to hear from classmates of Schulte who shared unpleasant memories of him crossing boundaries and making others uncomfortable. Several former classmates recalled to me...
Imagine posting on Facebook, this guy didn't seem like a nonce, and then everyone you've ever known has says, oh no, 100%.
Well, you'd think that was the issue at hand. Several former classmates recalled to me that Schulte was infamous for drawing swastikas at school, and on at least one occasion he did so in the yearbook of a Jewish student. Other classmates recalled sexually inappropriate behavior. One woman told me that he'd repeatedly exposed his penis to students when they were both in junior high band. He would try to touch people.
So exactly what I said. Cool.
Yes.
Fuck's sake.
Do you know the thing about the Ron Paul 2012 subreddit? How most of them or like a substantial chunk funneled their way into being like fascists and stuff. It's a weird pipeline of like, you know what, the government does too much. But they could kill some races, couldn't they?
Other classmates recalled sexually inappropriate behavior. One woman told me that he had repeatedly exposed his penis to students when they were both in junior high band. He would try and touch people or get people to touch him. That was essentially a daily occurrence. He had a known history of inappropriately touching and or sexually assaulting women even in high school. His high school friend Kavi Patel acknowledged that Schulte would draw swastikas all over the place. He wasn't anti-Semitic, Patel contended. He just wanted to get a rise out of people.
Mm-hmm. Using anti-Semitism.
Yeah. I was actually watching the child pornography, ironically. To get a rise out of people.
We'll get to that excuse, I'm sure.
Wait, well, what about, is it Pete Townsend, the Who guitarist who used the excuse of doing research?
Yeah.
There's also the same excuse the guy from the first season of The Thick of It gave.
Yes. Yeah. The actor. Yeah, that was the excuse that he gave.
Yeah.
After Schulte realized that his child porn archive had been discovered, he claimed that his collection, more than 10,000 images and videos, didn't belong to him. In college, he had maintained a server on which friends and acquaintances could store whatever they wanted. Unbeknownst to him, he contended, people had used his server to hide contraband. So, this server that is hidden inside three layers of encryption is just, as you do.
So, how long is this? How old is this guy? Like, he's mid-20s, right?
Well, I mean, if he's a Ron Paul guy, he's like, 35 at this point? Something like that, I would say.
So, yeah, okay. So, like, 15... Yeah, that's the kind of stuff you just keep around. Not realise it's there for, like, 15, 20 years. Yeah.
But, according to the FBI, as agents gathered more evidence, they unearthed chat logs in which Schulte conversed about child pornography with fellow enthusiasts. Where does one get kiddie porn these days? Schulte asked in a 2009 exchange.
I personally would not call them enthusiasts. Lovers of the art form.
Actually, I think they're called ephebophiles. This was yet another instance in which Schulte seemed recklessly disinclined to cover his tracks. His Google search history revealed numerous queries about images of underage sex. In chat logs, people seeking to discuss child pornography tended to use pseudonyms. One person Schulte interacted with went by HBP, another went by Sturm. Josh's username was Josh.
Is this you, Josh? No, it's a different Josh.
At one point, he volunteered to grant his new friends access to the child porn archive on his server. He had titled it home/josh/http/porn. Sturm, taken aback, warned Schulte, rename these things, for God's sake.
I like to solicit advice on how to store child pornography from other enthusiasts. Jesus fucking Christ.
One of the premier, CIA lead hackers is apparently this good at home security.
Oh my God. And why do they hire this guy again? Oh, probably because he's like 4chan. Yeah, 100% 4chan guy. Okay, yeah, gotcha.
So essentially, the FBI still can't prove that the Vault 7 leak, the WikiLeaks thing, is Josh's fault. So instead,
howdy, can they prove something else is his fault?
So now instead, they charge him with receipt, possession, and transportation of child pornography. Schulte pleaded not guilty. When he'd heard the government was pushing to keep him detained pending trial, his stomach dropped. He said, the crime I am charged with is in fact a non-violent, victimless crime, he objected.
Yeah. Citation needed on that one, I think.
Yeah. Although later on, while locked up for alleged noncing, the FBI does also indict him for Vault 7 later on. And while detained in prison,
wouldn't you? If you've got him stuck in the fucking cell, then you just see what sticks, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Although, to be fair, like at first, the judge presiding over the trial grants him bail because they don't think he's a flight risk, even though like he might be a state secret leaking nonce. However, later on, he is detained, but he meets some of his fellow inmates, and he gets his hand on.
Why is he detained though?
I can't remember.
Because they tell him as part of his bail that he's not allowed to use the internet, and lo and behold, he goes straight home and uses the internet.
Jesus.
But he uses like a fucking VPN or something because he thinks
he uses Tor.
Yeah, he uses Tor because he's like, oh, they'll not know it's me, and it's like, yeah, but they're watching your internet connection. They can see you fucking. They can't see what you're doing on like Tor, but they know you're fucking using it. You know what I mean? And so they send him straight to jail.
Just for being English.
He's just a winner from end to end, isn't he, really? You know what I mean?
He meets, essentially inside the jail, he meets some fellow inmates, and he also gets his hand, yet again, on an illegal smartphone, because he feels the need to keep posting, essentially.
Yeah.
Just the most powerful form of posting through it.
Yeah.
Posting through my incarceration.
Locked up for noncing AMA.
He was actually locked up for posting AMA.
But he does literally post through it though, doesn't he? Because he starts like leaking his prison diaries to WikiLeaks.
Yeah, I was about to come to that. Apart from that, though, Schulte figured out a way to hotwire a light switch in his cell so that it works as a cell phone charger. One of the people locked up with Schulte during this period praised his innovation, saying, after that, all the illegal prison phones, would charge that way.
There's a lot of bad things you can say about Schulte, but Big Tone has quite a lot of good things to say about him, so I think we should hear what he has to say.
On an encrypted Samsung phone, Schulte created an anonymous Facebook page called John Galt's Legal Defense Fund.
Oh, this guy's God. John Galt, finally. We found out.
For years you have been posting, who is John Galt? This is John Galt posting.
Yeah, for years you've been asking, who left all of this child porn on my secret computer?
I just love, like, libertarians trying for years and years to dispel this myth about them. And he's like, actually...
Well, funny you should mention it because, well, I've got a story for you.
He also set up a Twitter account at FreeJasonBourne.
This guy's the wettest fucking idiot I've ever heard of.
It's incredible, isn't it?
And in a drafts folder, he saved a tweet that said, "The Department of Justice arrested the wrong man for Vault 7. I personally know exactly what happened, as do many others. Why are they covering it up?"
Doesn't dispute the other charge, though.
I'm just thinking of the mole man meme now. I'll take the wettest idiot you have. No, that's too wet.
He also ends up contacting a bunch of journos. Astonishingly, it appears that Schulte may even have made contact with WikiLeaks during his imprisonment. In a Twitter post on June 19, 2018, Wiki released 7 installments of Schulte's prison writings, billing them as an account in which the alleged Vault 7 whistleblower would finally speak out in his own words. Schulte seems to have envisaged these essays, which are a sort of diaristic account of prison life with a broader critique of the criminal justice system, as a sort of letter from a Birmingham jail. He titled them Presumption of Innocence.
Jeez, unbelievable.
It's fucking incredible, this.
I mean, it's so good as well, though, isn't it? Where it's like they can't find any evidence of contact between him and WikiLeaks, and his first thought is, I know what I'm going to do. Contact WikiLeaks.
Yeah, at them on Twitter from my illegal phone that they find later anyway.
I can't believe he sees himself as the Martin Luther King Jr. of paedophiles.
In one of these jailhouse meditations, Schulte wrote that in prison it is prudent not to discuss your case with anyone because people are vultures and will do anything to help their own situation, including bartering your information for a better deal. He may not have appreciated quite how true this was, because at a certain point, his trusty lookout for when he was using his illegal phone, named Carlos, informed prison authorities that Schulte had a cell phone. When this news reached the FBI, officials panicked. If Schulte could surreptitiously make calls and access the internet, there was a danger he might continue to leak. There was a great deal of urgency to find the phone, one bureau official later acknowledged. One day in October 2018, no fewer than 50 agents descended on the Metropolitan Correctional Center, accompanied by a cell phone sniffing dog. It's the dog that barks at Wi-Fi. After they recovered the device, investigators found that it was encrypted, but also that Schulte, true to form, had written the password down in one of his notebooks.
Oh, for fuck's sake! This guy has literally no memory, except for the last thing he heard about is the thing that he will try and engage with. We don't want this guy to go on WikiLeaks. He's like, I know, I'll go on fucking WikiLeaks. For fuck's sake.
Well, I mean, if you thought Schulte was stupid, wait, I'll keep reading for you. Essentially, there comes a section now, which is, in a way, it's quite interesting as a thought experiment as well. It's like, if you put someone so involved in top secret level CIA stuff on public trial, that's a huge problem, right? Because he can call witnesses, which may be active CIA officers, and say things himself, or make witnesses say things in open court that shouldn't be revealed to the broader public. Sabrina Schroff, Schulte's public defender, chuckled at the Kafkaesque predicaments of the case, but she was also severely constrained in what she could say to me. We don't have the ability to cross-examine the classification authority, she pointed out. When the government designs something as secret, the lawyer cannot appeal the decision. Before the trial began, she already possessed a top-secret security clearance from another case. But in order to represent Schulte, she had to be read into even higher levels of fetishistically compartmentalized security. When she and her fellow public defenders got the names of witnesses, they were prohibited from any Google searches that might in any way link these officials to the CIA. Because some of the witnesses had common names, and Schroff and her team were not allowed to add the letters CIA to their search terms, it was occasionally impossible to gather any information. Which, to be fair, that's incredibly
fucked. Just put Central Intelligence Agency. There, job done. Because you're not allowed to include the letters C, I, and A at all. Okay.
The parade of witnesses from the CIA offered rare glimpses of office dynamics in a top-secret unit. It was sobering. The descriptions of Schulte's workplace called to mind not the steely competence of the Bourne identity, but rather tiresome hijinks and petty scheming in the vein of office space. This was the paradox of the proceedings. There was no way for the CIA to exact retribution against Schulte without, in the process, revealing a great deal of unflattering information about itself. Jurors would have to be told the story of an elite national security division that had become consumed by juvenile name-calling and recrimination. Senior CIA officials would have to submit to cross-examination about the frequency and severity of Nerf gunfights or about the lax security that made the breach possible.
The CIA is never going to face any kind of actual justice, is it? This is the closest we're going to get. Fucking Nerf guns and one moron who's incapable of, like, not typing into Google, like, search, where are the naked children, please, Mr.
Google? However, the real outrage was that a crucial CIA computer network, Devlan, of which this guy was one of the sysadmins, had essentially been unprotected. Hundreds of people had access to Devlan, including not just CIA employees, but also contractors. The CIA hackers appear to have disregarded even the kinds of elementary information security protocols that any civilian can recite from mandatory corporate training. Coders exchanged passwords with one another and sometimes shared sensitive details on post-it notes. They used passwords that were laughably weak, including 123 ABCDEF. It's fucking incredible. A classified damage assessment later conducted by the CIA after the leaks concluded that security procedures in the division had been woefully lax, and their own agency's hackers prioritized building cyber weapons at the expense of securing their own systems.
Yeah, because a point we skipped early on was that like network, the Devlan, wasn't connected to the outside internet. So their initial panic at the leak was that like it must be the work of a foreign country. Like only the Russians or the Iranians have the
or
power.
Paul Mason
have the power and intelligence to get in. Like they must have actually sent someone down from the ceiling, like in Mission Impossible, to plug a fucking memory stick into the Devlan. So I imagine that gave them like a false sense of security. Like, well, if no one can hack into it from the outside, it's fine to just write all the passwords on the walls. Do you know what I mean?
Big giant neon script of like my password is 123 password. Like,
yeah. Well, the thing is, man, when you play something like Deus Ex and you find some guy's password in his office drawer, you go, "This seems unrealistic," but how wrong you were.
Yeah.
Now, the red key cards, however, those are a different story.
So later on, Schulte is convinced. All this stuff goes on only during the trial about him leaking or not leaking the Vault 7 stuff. The nonsing is being held back as a separate trial until the first one is done. However, because essentially Schulte's defense is, and his legal team's defense is, yeah, he's an asshole, but you can't prove that he's the one who leaked it, which essentially is an argument that the jury ends up buying. So they only convict him on 2 very minor counts and not the 8 big ones like treason, etc. So the judge declares a mistrial on all the Vault 7 stuff. And so the US government, rather than pushing forward with like the nonsing, which might have secured like a very easy conviction.
Let's be clear, the nonsing charges.
Fair enough. Although, could go either way. So the US government, rather than pushing forward with the nonsing cases, which might have resulted, you would think, in a much easier conviction, instead announces that it would put Schulte on trial again for the same Vault 7 crimes, or alleged crimes. Meanwhile, in prison, Schulte has grown a very impressive beard, and also has converted to Islam because he thinks
when he first one of his early letters from a fucking Birmingham jail states that a lot of people pretend to be Jewish or like Muslim in prison because they get better food.
In response to that, he grows a big beard and also converts to Islam.
Okay, so he's not all bad then.
So nobody's
so it's impossible to say if he's bad or not.
To nobody's surprise, Schulte has tangled with prison guards, and in repeated filing to the new judge in his case, he has singled out individual guards and suggested that they should be the ones facing criminal charges. Schulte has filed more than...
Have you ever considered it's the people that lock up nonces that are the criminals?
Yeah.
Schulte has filed more than 60 official challenges to the conditions of his confinement. In very long memos, many of them handwritten, he has condemned the Justice Department, the CIA, the FBI, and the Bureau of Prisons. He refers to himself as
somewhat like a manifesto.
This is John Nonce speaking. He refers to himself as a torture cage and maintains that his living conditions are below that of impoverished persons living in third world countries. Now, given what we know of American jails, that could very well be true. One of his
critical support.
Yeah, they should abolish like prisons except for libertarians.
One of his complaints is that the guards do not give him adequate bathroom breaks during the hours he spends preparing his case in the prison law library. And so, lately, Schulte has taken to urinating in the law library.
Pissing in the corner like an animal.
It's an incredible surprise that like the guards like fucking don't like him, or that like his mate ratted him out for having a cell phone. He seems like such a people person.
Well, I mean, we were talking about this article earlier, Jamie, and I hope you don't mind me stealing one of your lines, but it is like they just hired the guy who was entirely made of red flags. Like, it's truly incredible. And also, once again, like, for the agency division concerned with, like, hacking and getting into people's personal business, how did they not, like, find out that the guy who had written "my password is password 123" on the side of his computer find out about, like, the massive trove of noncing? Like, I don't... Like, what... This sort of belies James's earlier point that, like, the CIA is a very powerful machine, and it's actually just, like, intensely composed of just clowns all over the place.
It's kind of like a vicious organization in spite of all the fucking morons that work there.
Yeah, there's a bit in there about how his lawyers tried to get hold, because he had to undergo like psychological profiling before he was allowed to join, and his lawyers tried to get hold of the results of that psychological profile, and the CIA wouldn't let them have it.
Which, to be fair, is incredible. I really would like to see what that fucking profile had to say. Like, what was in there that was like, oh no, this guy, like, fine. Like, he started arguing with the receptionist on the way in, and then the examining doctor had a fist fight with him in the corridor in the end, and then, like...
He got his cock out in front of the fucking psychologist, you know what I mean? Like, I can understand completely why they wouldn't fucking like give it to his lawyers, because they either have to have like missed all of the red flags, in which case they look incompetent, or ignored all of the red flags, in which case they look ridiculous. Do you know what I mean? It's like there's no scenario there where the CIA like fucking hired this dipshit and come out the other end of that like hiring process looking good.
Yeah, I mean, does the CIA ever really come out of any sort of thing looking good?
No, but I mean, like, you know, in the They don't come out of it looking remotely fucking competent.
Well, that's the thing. Like, we think about the CIA and all the horrible things they've done, like overthrowing the Iranian government in the 50s or the 60s, I can't remember, and like Guatemala and Venezuela, or trying to overthrow Venezuela.
I mean, pick your fucking
Bolivia,
right?
Yeah, exactly. But then you have to remember, this is also the CIA that sent those guys to try. I think it was Venezuela with the people that ended up pissing on their own faces because they were on an incline and try to kill Castro with exploding cigars. Like, this is the same organisation.
The Bin Laden Darth Maul doll.
Yeah. Oh, fuck's sake, I forgot about that.
No, that was, I mean, it's truly incredible behavior, because, like, my personal theory is that just the CIA is just 90% insane clown shoes like this, and just like raging stupidity throughout, and like 10% like incredible, like effective evil. But I might be revising it to like 95% clown shoes, and like it's like, you know, it's the monkeys with the fucking typewriters again.
That one guy that the 10% that's competent, he does the Marvel scripts.
It's just the idea you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Yeah, that's definitely how they're operating. Like,
it's like, I don't know if this exploding cigar is going to work, but I tell you what won't work is not scented an exploding cigar.
there's a new trial. It began genuinely like a couple of days ago. The new trial began this week, but no journalist is allowed to be involved, to be in the room, to be in the courtroom, or know much about it. It's all wrapped up in secrecy. As again, whether or not that's due to genuine secrecy, or whether or not it's because the CIA really, really doesn't want Schulte to show off like how much of a dick he is and how much the CIA let him get away with, and like how many passwords are actually like password 123 anymore.
It still makes me laugh, that one.
While reporting this article, I often wondered how the CIA must have missed the obvious combustibility of this profile when it hired Schulte and gave him a security clearance. In order to get the job, he had been subjected to a battery of tests, but, and this is your bit, Jamie, when his lawyers tried to obtain the psych profile that the agency had produced on him, the CIA would not turn it over. When you consider the powerful forces...
And with good cause.
When you consider the powerful forces arrayed against him and the balance of probability that he is probably guilty of the leaks, Schulte has now decided to defend himself instead of having a professional lawyer argue his case.
I mean, to be fair to the public defender, although it did sound like they had like a really high level of security clearance, but I don't imagine a lot of public defenders get that sort of thing. So it must be probably quite competent, but irrespective of that, imagine being a public defender going against like one of the branches of government, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the thing is as well, she got the fucking dipshit like a retrial. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's not nothing considering how much of a fucking fiasco he is. Like, do you know what I mean? He's basically turning up to court every day in a fucking t-shirt that says "I did it," and she still managed to bamboozle the jury. So, but he's not happy with that.
With all his passwords on.
Yeah. But
he's what he's actually doing is speed running O.J. Simpson. And he's written the book before the trial.
Yeah.
Yeah, titled When I Did It.
He's like fucking. Do you know what I mean? He's just he's going to represent himself in court because that's what winners do.
I mean, I did skip over a couple paragraphs which goes more into like the first trial, and like his public defender sounds like a fucking like an amazing lawyer who really knows her shit and actually just gets the CIA to just break down its own defenses, because they kept trying to like explain to the jury how virtual machines and HTTP protocols work, whereas her defense was like, yeah, he's a dick, but you can't prove that he's the guy who leaked it. Which is fantastic.
Yeah, the defense basically hinged on the fact that he was such a fucking knobhead that it was obvious they were going to frame him. Do you know what I mean? Like,
I mean, fair play.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, obviously they're going to blame the guy with the huge cache of child porn. How original! Get some new material, guys.
Sure, blame the libertarian for just asking questions. When you consider the powerful forces arrayed against him and the balance of probability that he is guilty, Schulte's decision to represent himself seems reckless. But for the CIA and the Justice Department, he remains a formidable adversary because he is bent on destroying them, has little to lose, and his head is entirely filled with classified information, brackets, and nonsense. I added those.
It sounds to me like his head's filled entirely with sand, frankly.
using his brain solely to keep his ears apart.
I mean, it's not filled with passwords. That's all we do know.
It's because all that sand is in there.
He said his previous, now fired public lawyer, lawyers are bound to certain codes of ethics and what they're allowed to do.
Whereas I am not.
There are certain things we cannot argue, certain arguments we cannot make. But if you're defending yourself, you can make all the motions you want. You can really try your case. In a June 2nd court filing, Schulte suggested with a menacing flourish that if the government goes to trial with the child pornography charges, he plans to make it maximally painful for the CIA. In his defense, he promises, he will incorporate extensive testimony about agency operations and assets and will potentially require the courtroom appearance of 9 covert officers, 17 overt officers, and at least 1 intelligence asset. So the question is, like, of course, does the CIA want this fucking trial to go ahead?
The thing is, that's for the child porn offences. He's gonna do that. Like, the judge is gonna, like, fucking spend the entire trial just, like, ruling things out because they're irrelevant, you know what I mean? Like, how did all this child porn get onto your computer? Well, I'll tell you a story that starts in the office of the CIA, you know what I mean? And then just like, there was a guy who was shooting Nerf darts at me, and I wasn't fucking happy about that. Like, just Grandpa Simpson on the stand. Console me.
I was wearing an onion on my belt, as was the style at the time.
Pouring a cache of pornography on my belt. With my password T-shirt.
There's a bit of an anecdote from my time online, because I once knew a libertarian, and he was going out. Well, he was going out. You could just stop there,
like.
So, he was going out with some strangely of legal age woman, and she told him that she was pregnant, and it turned out that was a lie. She wasn't pregnant. But the best part, this story is relevant because he, on this forum, was absolutely convinced that he could convince, like, a judge and jury to make this woman get an abortion. And this is like the libertarian confidence in court that they think they can win any argument.
Yeah, well, because the flag's got a gold fringe, you see. So,
I mean,
I did love that judge who described all these free men on the land as essentially trying to cast legal spells.
Yeah,
that was fun.
But the best thing about this story is this is in Utah. It's like a very conservative state, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm pretty sure I could get a judge to force a woman to get an abortion."
Well, I mean, do you know what I mean? It's just gonna rock in and, like, call the judge Admiral or some shit, and then, like, that's the secret phrase that unlocks the legal system for you.
The secret phrase being password ABCDEF. In a contest between the dictates of official secrecy and the imperatives of justice, odds are that secrecy will win. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it will. Schulte knows this, and that may be his greatest advantage. He has said of the Vault 7 case, "I expect a not guilty verdict on all counts, and anything less will be an utter failure." His public defender told me of her client, "He's hopeful now."
I just want to say, like, is there anything else would be a complete failure? On whose part? He is defending himself now.
He's gonna find one weird trick, like he's gonna get a restraining order against the judge or some shit. And then, like, the trial collapses.
His father said the same thing, assuring me that Josh has learned a lot about the legal process and that he's not giving up. He seems to be holding up pretty strong, his father said. He's a fighter. I'll fucking say he's a fighter. Like, I'm not sure the cause of which he's enlisted is, like, something to be proud of or to be emulated, but, like, fuck me, is this guy a fighter?
He might not have any principles except that one specific one, but by God.
So he's a libertarian, so there's only one AOC he's interested in. As you can see.
Anyway, that's the end of the article, which I think you could all agree it was very much worth our time. It's fucking incredible.
Yeah. A real winner there. Oh, you missed the best fucking bit. I've just remembered. When they were looking at how the fuck, because in his trial, his lawyer argued that the CIA, like, oh yeah, they think this guy did it because, like, you know, they didn't even notice the stuff had been stolen until a year later when it turned up on WikiLeaks. And as part of the investigation into how we'd managed to steal it because they'd revoked his access, they fucking went through the logs and he'd gained access to the devlan using a fucking backdoor that he'd installed himself. And the name of the username on the backdoor was King Josh 3000. It's like a fucking an X-Man. Do you know what I mean? His superpower is everything he touches turns into a smoking gun.
It's everything he touches just turns to Josh.
Again, Alistair, it confirms your theory that he just wrote "if I did it" before and during he did it.
Fucking Christ! Like,
yeah.
How? I hope this is like a representative sample of the caliber of idiot that they hire to that organisation, because by God, I dread to think what they'd be able to accomplish if they had anyone with an ounce of common sense.
They're definitely not sending their best.
No.
But it's like if the Zodiac Killer, instead of using codes, was just sending letters saying like, "I can't wait to be a US Senator for Texas."
Truly credit. I mean, our one hope in terms of the security state is that like MI5, 6, the CIA, and all these people are just filled with like massive dipshits, essentially. Like, preferably not of the nonsense variety, but just like idiots who are just like.
But you can guarantee that they are.
Yeah. This is like literally like "this is me.crimes" appended to every email. Like.
Do you know who Randy Pitchford is?
Yes.
Rings a bell.
Yeah. He's the CEO of Gearbox and makes the Borderlands games.
Oh, right.
He left a USB full of pornography at the restaurant Medieval Times.
Yeah,
like, this is the caliber of like what I want from MI6.
It was a USB with barely legal pornography,
yes,
and company financial documents.
Yeah. And the reason he had that barely legal pornography is because he saw it and then he had to purchase it because the woman was doing things that he described as magic, and he is himself a enthusiastic magician.
That was genuinely his defense. It was a video of a female ejaculation, and he'd never seen that before and assumed it must be a magic trick, and he wanted to figure out how it was done.
So anyway, that's a new CIA director.
I wish him the best of luck in his career.
Oh.
All right, so as we're closing out this episode, we're all going to go to cia.gov and just like type in password 123 in the corner. So the nukes will
just
be
log
loosened
in
in about 5
as
minutes.
King Josh 3000 and see what we can steal.
No, that one's been compromised. It's now King Josh 3001.
King Josh 69420.
All right, so that should just about do us for this evening. But before we log off, Jordan, you are also on a podcast. Where can our distinguished listeners find you?
You can find me at the beginning of Peace at Home. And you find Comradio on Twitter at Comradio UK and on Patreon at patreon.com/Comradio. And it's on all the podcast platforms you can imagine.
Yes. We too are on Patreon, patreon.com/PraxisCast, where you should definitely sign up for at least one extra episode a month, but we're working on raising it up if more of you fine people/suckers subscribe to us. There's also the t-shirt store on T-Mail. We'll put a link in the show description because I can't remember it because this is the bit that David usually does.
Praxiscast.tmail.com.
Well, among others, you can find a t-shirt that says "Stop asking me to do work," and which which Jamie has just ably proven. Yeah. There's also the stream. I have no idea what's going on with that anymore. So, Jamie, when's streaming thing?
Thursdays typically.
Yeah. Are we on this week?
Yes.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well,
so, with that ringing endorsement, check out the stream. What time?
About 8, I think, is it?
8 till 10.
Yeah, on Thursday at twitch.tv/PraxisCast.
Yeah, sure, why not?
Yeah, that sounds right. If it's not right, yell at David on Twitter.
Yeah, at Sanitary Nap Time.
Yeah, at Sanitary Nap Time, yeah.
It's all his fault. And last but not least, I guested on the Pizza Home podcast, where Jamie's also on, which is out already. You can listen to that as Jamie and I engage in Fedora chat and try to derail Sinan as much as we humanly can.
Yeah, try. You know what I mean? Like,
Rob finally gets to ride shotgun, so all hell breaks loose, or
exactly.
attempts to.
Yeah, and like Rob said, sign up to our Patreon. This month's bonus episode, we've got Connor and Sarah from It's Movie Time, Baby. And we drove David to the depths of despair, so definitely worth your £5 a week, £5 a month.
What better ringing endorsement do you want than that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just send us money in an envelope. That's fine. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, just write Praxis Cast on the other side and put a stamp, and it will get to us.
Yeah.
Yeah, write some of your passwords down as well on there, and then send it to us. All right, and on that note, goodbye, everybody.
Yep.
Goodbye.
Bye.
See ya.